Hello, it's Giant 1400, and today we're going to talk about why Cinder is the antagonist for Jaune, and kind of get into a little bit of why Jaune is a protagonist in the story. RWBY is obviously the main protagonist, but RWBY has like 5 other protagonists besides RWBY. To list them off, the rest of Team RWBY, that's Weiss, Yang, Blake, and then there's Jaune and Oscar. And I will get into, like, I'll make another video probably like in a couple weeks describing why like these 5 are the well, these 6 including RWBY are the protagonists of the story of RWBY, and why like someone like Ren, Nora, and like Priya and like Crow and stuff are really not. But that's another video. Today I just want to talk about why Cinder is the antagonist for Jaune. I'll just kind of list off kind of the definitions of a protagonist and an antagonist. So a protagonist, according to the dictionary or whatever, it says the leading character or one of the major characters in a drama, movie, novel, or other fictional text. Anyway, so this definition doesn't encompass what a protagonist really is fully and completely, like, at least in my mind. A more like complete definition, at least in my understanding of what a protagonist is that one that their goal is directly influences the main plot of the story that you're trying to really write. The story is that the heroes want to stop Salem from obtaining the relics. This is actually why kind of Yang is definitely considered a protagonist and Blake is considered a protagonist, because Blake's dealings with like the White Fang, Yang's dealing with her mom and actually her attaining one of the relics. But I'll get into more of that in a different video. Jaune's main purpose right now is to protect his friends, and that is like directly correlation to them completing the whole their whole goal of stopping Salem. Now you may be like wondering, oh, like Nora and Ren, like they kind of have the same goal, if you will. Jaune's is a little different than them, because if you go back in volume 4, I think it was Ren who stated that like we're here to help RWBY. Like Ren and Nora's goals are really to help RWBY as the main protagonist. Whereas Jaune, when asked, he said we all have different reasons for going. Jaune's main goal isn't necessarily to stop Salem. It's actually his main goal is to protect the people that are going to stop Salem. Now there's like a slight difference there, and really the difference comes down to his motive isn't to like necessarily help his friends. His motive is to save his friends, whereas Nora and Ren, their motive is to help RWBY or help Jaune complete their goals. Jaune's main goal is to protect his friends. So there's a slight difference there, but that difference makes all the difference when discussing why Jaune is a protagonist of the story. Again, not the main one, that's RWBY, but Jaune is a protagonist. Another kind of defining characteristic of a protagonist is that throughout the story they grow, and we obviously seen this with Jaune. Jaune's like main goal before was to kind of become a hero. He was kind of selfish in a way, like he just wanted to do everything himself, but he grew as a character. Some of his more defining moments was when he was thinking about his friends against Cardin. He didn't care what happened to him. He didn't care if he got kicked out. He was not going to harm his friends. He was going to protect them. Another one is in the dance where he actually decided to help what's his name, Neptune, kind of get with Weiss, if you will, and he was thinking about Weiss over himself because he liked Weiss, but he was actually thinking about her selfishly, and this time he was thinking about her selflessly. He was giving up his feelings for her in order to help her out to be with the guy she wants to be with. And this actually continues all the way to volume 5, where Jaune chooses to fight Cinder, knowing that he's most likely going to die, just to buy his friends more time so that they have a higher odds, if you will, of living, because he knows how powerful Cinder is. Now you may be thinking to yourself, like, why is well, this isn't the whole reason why Jaune fought Cinder. It was because he was angry for Pierre's death and everything, and that is true. But the main reason he chose to fight Cinder, he stated actually to Cinder that it's all worth him dying, was worth it to buy them time. He knows how powerful Cinder is. He knew he didn't stand a chance, but he did it anyway to buy his friends more time. To basically stall Cinder out, if you will. Though he was emotional and very angry as well at the time, that's actually was his main driving force. So at this point, we kind of define Jaune as a protagonist in the story of RWBY. But that doesn't necessarily mean Cinder is his antagonist. Because another characteristic of a protagonist is that you have, in many stories, I would have to do more research on this statement, but so take my word as it is. But in my understanding, in many stories, you have protagonist needs to come up with to someone or something that is opposed to their goals, and that's really where Cinder comes in. There's a lot of contrast between Cinder and Jaune, but one of the main things is that Jaune's goal is to protect his friends. Cinder actually takes pleasure in killing people, and more than that, she actually takes pleasure in like harming others. When Jaune stated to Cinder that it was like, oh, if he died, it's all worth it to buy them time, Cinder, instead of killing him, decided I can cause this guy more pain if I kill one of his friends. Now, many people say, why didn't she kill RWBY? Well, RWBY is technically under protection of Salem because Salem wants RWBY under her lineage. For some reason, we don't know the full story of that, only that Salem wants to use RWBY, wants to get RWBY on her side for some reason. That's kind of why she wants to keep her alive, and that's why RWBY's kind of untouchable. So this leads me to my kind of a next argument, that Cinder wants to kill RWBY, and that some people say that makes like Cinder RWBY's antagonist, but really RWBY's antagonist is Salem. It was Torchwick, and then it was Cinder for a little bit, and now they're flipping it over to Salem, slowly but surely. However, like one of the arguments people say is that Cinder wants to kill RWBY, and that would like directly oppose her goals and everything. That is true. However, RWBY's goals haven't been necessarily defined. She wants to help people, even at like pretty much the cost of her own life. So that isn't necessarily opposed to what her really goal is. And Jaune's goal is to protect his friends. RWBY is his friend, so Cinder going after RWBY and Jaune having to protect RWBY or Weiss or anyone really is actually part of like Jaune's goal, and Cinder by Cinder actually wanting to kill RWBY, it directly opposes that goal. So you have this like antagonist against this protagonist, against the goal of the protagonist, if you will, going on with Jaune and Cinder. Now there's some other interesting things about this, some sharp contrast between Jaune and Cinder. Some of them is Jaune has become selfless, where Cinder is obviously very selfish. She only sees people as like really tools to get what she wants. Even someone like Emerald or Mercury or whoever, she only sees them as tools to get what she wants. Jaune is selfless. He's willing to give his life up for his friends. Now Jaune started off weak as in the series, where Cinder was very powerful. That's another like sharp contrast between the two. Another one dealing with this is that Jaune worked hard to get more powerful, whereas Cinder kind of like took the easy way out, if you will. Not necessarily easy, but she gained power from like another source. Jaune isn't doing that, and as far as we know, he's not going to do that. Now, Jaune's semblance being his like aura to give to others, if you will, like healing. Jaune's Cinder's semblance is like destroying. Basically, I mean, it's more deeper than that, but it's basically destruction. So as opposed to life, destruction. It's almost like that whole parallel between good and evil, which actually between like the two brothers in Crow's story, if you will. Now, Jaune has become, he was pretty much humbled down, whereas Cinder is very prideful, and we get to see like her pride in her fights. She like toys with the enemies and stuff. Jaune is humble. He knows like his strength. He knows that he wasn't powerful enough to defeat Cinder, but Cinder's pride and her liking to toy with her enemies has allowed Jaune to fight her for a time. Now, some other contrasts are that Jaune does not, he's like one of the only people who doesn't use like any dust at all. Cinder uses a ton of dust to turn her clothes. That's kind of a minor thing. Another one dealing kind of with the aura as well is that Jaune has a ton of aura. He definitely has more than Weiss, and as far as we know, Weiss probably has the average amount. Jaune arguably, I mean, it could be argued that he has the most aura of anyone in the series, but we don't know yet. We just know he has more aura than Weiss, and we can kind of compare Weiss's aura to others, but that's more dealing with power scaling, and I won't get into that right now. Cinder actually has less aura because she's kind of like turning into a Grimm. Her arm is a Grimm, so it could be argued that she has less aura since she has really less of her body, if you will. So it could make that argument. It's we don't actually know exactly how aura works. If it works sort of like in Star Wars: The Force, where there is where it needs more life means more aura, if you will, then why does Jaune have more aura than everyone else? Well, I say everyone else, but we don't know for sure on that. Anyway, so those are like some of the sharp contrasts. Definitely like Cinder takes actually pleasure in killing others, whereas Jaune values life of others. He doesn't want to see people get hurt or anything like that, or die. Whereas Cinder obviously takes pleasure in killing others. So there's definitely this like contrast between the two, and people could actually make the argument that there's a contrast between Cinder and RWBY as well, and that is true. However, it's more really defined as Jaune's part of his character than it is Cinder. Even Jaune's character growth becoming more selfless and less selfish, whereas Cinder's very selfish, and it's like, since that's defined in his growth, it makes more sense for Cinder to be Jaune's antagonist than it would be for RWBY. Another main thing about like RWBY being about Cinder being RWBY's antagonist is that Cinder pretty much has kryptonite against RWBY has kryptonite against Cinder, which doesn't really make for a good story, if you will. And this is more of a really plot thing and more story crafting thing than anything else. But it doesn't make for a good story when a protagonist has the weakness of their antagonist and can pretty much defeat them without even trying, if you will. Now, RWBY doesn't have control over Silver Eye powers yet, but we see how powerful they are against Cinder, enough to take her down. I mean, RWBY would have taken Cinder down if it wasn't for Emerald stopping her. I mean, it was enough to bring her to her knees and have Jaune pretty much almost finish her off. It was really close. I mean, Cinder had to use her maiden powers to get out of that situation. So it's definitely you definitely don't want in your story your main protagonist up against an antagonist that they have a like kryptonite. They have the antagonist's weakness, if you will. It just doesn't make for a good story. You want to see the protagonist progress. Like, Jaune is weak, and he will progress through the story to be close to probably Cinder's level in the end. He probably won't get to Cinder's level of strength, but he'll probably get close to, and he'll probably end up actually beating her at the end. I believe from the direction they're taking Jaune's character is that he will choose actually not to kill her. But that's like a different topic for a different day. In the end, Cinder actually makes for a really perfect antagonist for Jaune in many different ways, many different aspects, more than I stated here. And Jaune versus Cinder in Volume 5, and the fact that RWBY is so powerful against Cinder proves the fact that Cinder is Jaune's antagonist and not RWBY's, whereas RWBY's antagonist is being a transitional phase to Salem, if you will. When they actually make that connection RWBY and Salem. I mean, to be honest, their first meeting is probably going to have RWBY be captured, if you will, at some point, and that's how like RWBY and Salem are first going to talk, unless Salem actually comes out of her castle and is like, I can't believe they have one of the relics, like because of her defeat at Haven, if you will. She might actually come out and actually full force against them, but they might not take that in direction, and RWBY's first encounter with Salem actually might be like RWBY's capture. Anyway, I really like Jaune versus Cinder. I really like that dynamic they have, how they are such sharp contrast between each other. I mean, Cinder killing Priya in Volume 3 and Volume 5, Jaune versus Cinder, kind of proves this fact that Cinder is Jaune's main antagonist throughout the series. Well, as far as we know, I mean, they might flip it off to someone else. I mean, I originally actually thought it was going to be Watts because of Jaune's like really good strategy and really good tactics, if you will, on the battlefield. Well, it's not really strategy. He has more tactics than anything else. That's probably another topic to talk about, the difference between strategy and tactics. Anyway, it seems I was wrong about Jaune, Watts being Jaune's main antagonist. It seems definitely to be Cinder. Unless they take the story in a different direction, the writers could always do that. However, I really like Jaune versus Cinder, and I really hope to see more fights of that. Really hope to see Jaune progress over time. Like maybe his next battle with Cinder, he'll have the help of like his team, and they will actually be able to beat Cinder. And then like maybe the next time, like he fights her like one-on-one, and he loses again, and then the next time he actually beats her. I don't know, some kind of progression, if you will, in his growth as a fighter and as a character, and maybe have some character growth for Cinder during their fights. Like maybe show like she actually slowly like respects him as a fighter or something like that. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting contrast between the two. It's almost like good versus evil, which I really like personally. Anyway, so that's my video. That's kind of why Cinder is Jaune's I said protagonist, didn't I? That's why Cinder is Jaune's antagonist, and kind of a brief thing of why like Jaune is a protagonist, if you will. I'll give another video like in a couple weeks explaining like just a brief thing of why all of RWBY's 6 protagonists and why they're considered protagonists, and why isn't just RWBY a protagonist. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you in the next one. Bye.